What were you being influenced by? What were your inspirations at the time?
From other filmmakers or just from
Artworks or whatever?
Oh, everything. Mostly the media seemed to me. Billboards and signs, and I worked at a mental hospital once not during the making of this film, but everybody that they came in, that was one of the first things that they said. They thought the radio was talking directly to them, and the signs along the street were talking directly to them. And there were times in the making of this film that I kind of felt that way about all this stuff you see out there, and things that you hated about it, the kind of religious stuff that comes over the radio that you don't want to hear, which you can easily turn off, but it's still there and it's all a part of your makeup.
How do you view this film as we'll say, as a time capsule? I mean, are there
I think of
the culture change? I mean, obviously, the cultural changes are dramatic, but
I think it's a 1967 film rather than a 71 film. But Brackage told me once that he thought it was one of the better films of the 60s. And I thought, okay. But there are, this was pre-Devo, and Jerry Casale is in the film. I spotted him a few times. And it was, the kids with Kent State were just great. I would put up a sign outside of the student center saying, I need 50 people on Sunday, meet at the parking lot, you know. And I would show up and there would be 50 people. And I would give them the props and Pat would make the lemonade for everybody. And it was always a little hard to control what everybody was going to do. And at one point I borrowed one of those lift things from Davy Tree, what do you call them? I was up in the air filming.
Cherry picker?
Yes,
yeah.
Cherry picker, right. And that was kind of fun, but it was hard to control things, you know. You're yelling down, do this and do that, and then quickly get down below and film them from those angles as well, you know. So, but the students were great. They were always cooperative and they had a lot of fun. And I would show them the film. I'd say, in 2 weeks, I'm going to show what we did yesterday, you know, and they would come and see the rushes, as Hollywood would say. And that kind of kept interest with the students, too. So they would keep coming back, you know, again and again to be in the very scenes.
How did the students respond? I mean, in a you know, obviously non-objective blanket statement. So how do students respond to the shootings there? Obviously, was it more of a despair or more of an anger, or what sort of came out of that?
Well, I think there was a multitude of experiences. Some students just didn't come back because they were afraid to come back. And a lot of other students were outraged and came back with a kind of vengeance then in the fall, you know. But they called off classes the minute the shootings took place, and we had to finish the spring semester at our homes. Brinsley can attest to that.
We had to keep the classes going, but we weren't allowed to go on campus.
On campus, right.
Or have the faculty.
The faculty met at a church outside of the campus. And we had some other people and myself made a film about Kent State. It's called Confrontation at Kent. It's kind of a very quick film. It's mostly interviewing people in town and some students about the shooting. And then I made a short film about Alison Krauss and went to Pittsburgh and talked to her father, and he's on this track. You hear him every once in a while saying this or saying that. And, there are sections where two women say, oh, I'm sorry they didn't kill more students.
Yeah, which came from where?
That was from the Confrontation film.
So somebody you interviewed just in town or something?
Yeah, we just stopped them along the street and asked them, how did they respond to the shooting at Kent? And they just said, well, we're sorry they didn't kill more of the students. But a lot of the students were, they were just very angry about it, you know, about what had happened. But they had to go home. They closed the campus and chased a lot of them home. Most of them stayed and kind of finished up some of their life, but I think a lot of them just went home, didn't they? Yeah. And their school didn't start again until May 4th, and then I think the middle of June there was a summer session of sorts, wasn't it? Or not? Okay, I don't even remember. But we had finished the film in 1 week, this confrontation film, which was pretty hurriedly made, and we couldn't show it to anybody, and so somebody at Akron, the Akronite Institute, invited us over, and a lot of students and a lot of people came there to see it. And nobody thought it's not a very good film, but it was interesting, all of the various comments about it. And in the first row were 4 guys who we just knew were FBI. guys there to see what the film was about. Because the president had been somebody badmouthed President White in the film, and we knew that. Of course, we were all very paranoid too, but these guys were really FBI agents, you know. And another funny thing that happened, I got letters from the president and from the upper administration wanting to know if any university equipment had been used in the making of that film. And it hadn't, of course. And but my wife Pat wrote back a wonderful letter saying, not only was it all my equipment, but sometimes the students used my personal equipment to make their films. And we never heard from them again. But they were outraged that a camera that the school owned might have been used in the making of this outrageous film.
Where were you doing the optical printer work and then so forth?
At a place called, of all things, Pilgrim Film Services. And the scene of all the nudes in the squares, they were supposed to all be moving. But the guy at Pilgrim just said, no, we can't have that. You know? So they just put them, they froze them. But I would go down there, and they were great. I would go down with the A and B roll and say, I want this face in this image, you know, because I couldn't do any of that at the time. There are a couple of matte box things in the film that I did do. Some of the signs on the billboards where there would be a figure in it or a face, or some of that I just did myself in camera. But all the other things were done by this place. And they were, at the time, they were very cheap, right? Because they had never done this kind of stuff for anybody. So they were kind of having fun doing it. And got that off fairly cheaply.
I am more and more impressed by the montage, really, after yesterday, now today. And I'm still curious, how long did it take, for example, to edit this film?
It was a quickie. It was 1 year. Akron had taken 4 years.
Oh.
And this one just went by very quickly. But I had money from the AFI to do it. That was a big help. And a lot of it was just going out, filming on my own, putting a camera on a tripod, just getting near traffic and finding all these wonderful faces going by in cars and trucks and, you know. And there's not the same kind of, there's more of a personal thing, I think, in 37, 73 with the child and the chauffeur. But I don't think that goes on here. I don't think you much care about this guy in the car. He's just a kind of another element, you know, who's being.
What happened to the footage that you cut off the editing? Because it seems that in your films there are so many elements, there are over, you know, a lot of layers and things that can be eventually reused. So I was wondering if any of the footage that you didn't use in a
there were a lot of outtakes. I'm not very good with ratio. I think it was something like 10 to 1.
Wow, yeah.
And but Akron was a 2-hour film, and one of the guys that was in it said, "Why don't you make another film with what you didn't use?" But it doesn't work that way. A lot of the footage is just repetitious of what you already have, or take things taken twice or three times, or more faces, or more cars, or more of this or that. But there would not be enough to do anything else with it. And probably at the moment it's sitting in garbage cans in my garage.